So, welcome back to podcast number 3. And today I am delighted to welcome Jake as our first guest onto the show. So, I suppose, Jake, I'm going to let you take it away from there to tell the lads a little bit about yourself before we get into talking about what we're actually going to talk about today.
Oh well, I'm the old guy of the group. I'm kicking 60, and been following MotoGP and super bikes since I guess mid 70s. Okay, yeah, I remember.
I wasn't born.
Yeah, Agostini and Roberts racing against each other. Okay, so I've been following all through the Spencer years, all the golden years, supposedly the '90s, until today. I'm a tech head more than anything else. I love
Very
race
good.
engineering. I'm not really a brand guy. Like I said, I don't care what country the bike's made from. If they make a good bike, I'm for it. If they have bad business tactics, I don't like them. You know what I mean? Just like everything to be on an up and up and on a level playing field. You know, but I follow most of everything. You know, if it has two wheels, I'm following it.
You had a couple of teams or a couple of bikes yourself that are pretty special, yeah.
Yeah, I bought the a EBR 1190 RS right from Buell off of Mid Ohio Raceway. Jeff May's bike had a little team. Won a race at Daytona in October on the AMR the sanctioning, and then we quit that after a year. But had 17. I've had every bike you can imagine. I had 17 bikes last year. So,
Wow.
like I said, I have no bias of it because I rode them all. But due to health problems with my back and I can't feel my feet, I started to sell off the older ones and kept all my new ones. So I have the Ducati and the BMW and the Kawasaki H2 and the Honda CBR 1000R. I have everything, and the Gixxer, the whole 9 yards. You know what I mean?
Nice one.
So,
Nice
but
one.
I love this site. I came to here because it was such honest, straightforward reporting, no BS. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
So
stuff. Thanks for that.
Very
Well, look,
welcome, man.
very welcome, very welcome, and we'll kick in with I suppose a Marquez another update or what was going on. I was reading during the week. Alzamora came out and said, "Look, we know what Pooch has said, and Mark is going to try and work as hard as he can to get back onto the bike in time for the tests. But realistically, he has to recover 100%. Like the doctors have even said, this is the last chance saloon. If this doesn't work, and if he doesn't get the extra rotation in the arm, it's going to be a very, very difficult career for him. Now, we know from last week he only has 1, maybe 2 years realistically left. Do you know what I mean? That's where himself has said, he's going to struggle after that. If the arm isn't right, I don't really see him coming back. I do fully understand why they want him to come back. But I thought it was very telling that Alzamora put the pressure back onto to Pooch to say, don't be getting a bit ahead of yourself there. Shows, I mean, we want him to recover. We want him to be right getting back on that bike. And I do think it's very similar. We'll talk about Mir as manager in a while, but I think that message is a message directly back to Honda Japan, just to not blur any lines that Pooch maybe having there.
He's been known for that.
Yeah. But so I also saw a picture, and I thought it was very funny. I also saw a picture of him without the sling. It's kind of telling.
What did the arm look like, Mac? I didn't see it.
I haven't any updates from. Remember the pictures that I showed the last time where it was really cut next to the. But he did have the hand tucked when he was without the sling. He was sitting, but like you didn't see any graphics of it. You know what I mean? I presume it was bandaged up fairly nicely, but. It's definitely interesting though for me to hear that, because with what Alzamora said, it's really a message back to say back off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think Puig was pushing. They've been pushing to have him back. on the bike in Misano for the first test in Misano, and I'd have the feeling from what's going on that they're banking all their future development plans on Marquez leading the project, leading the bike design back to success. I read a comment on one of the magazines from his brother Alex, who said that when Mark was gone, all the different riders, himself, Taka and Paul, all were given different feedback, and Honda didn't know which way to go. Whereas when Mark is there, to just follow his feedback, his leadership, and to go in that direction. So I would imagine, hearing that they're lost, and they're planning that their only way out of it is to get Marquez back in the saddle and let him lead development. And of course, as we know, Alberto, he's as you can see, Alberto's just laser beam focus. He's just tunnel vision. We'll get this guy and we'll get the best out of him.
Yeah, I heard him say they said we need him. We absolutely, positively, without him, we're not going anywhere because we're lost we're just absolutely lost. But his doctor, Marquez's doctor, said he shouldn't even be on a bike, period. It's just like a road bike until at least November. And he said there's going to be problems. Not like there might be problems. He said there will be problems because all the tendons and things that have to move and heal, and they're going to rub. They're going to rub. Your body has to adjust and things of that nature. And a bone is not round. And don't forget they cut that bone and it was twisted. And now they put it back 30 degrees. I don't know how that's going to fuse together when you have two ovals. You know what I mean? Where's the marrow go? That type of thing. I'm not a doctor, of course, but it looks very, very complicated to be back in 3 months.
Yeah, well, I think it's just. I just think it's funny, and you're going to be watching this on Saturday, but I actually have released a video on Thursday. I think it was Thursday. It's called Honda and Yamaha have the exact same problem, and I do believe Honda have made a great step because they've gone away from what they know, and the same problem Yamaha and Honda have is that only one person can ride that bike.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah,
and Honda, the prime example, the proof of the pudding is Mark left and went away, and Honda barely score points now, right? And I think Yamaha have to go through that pain so that they can get a bike that everyone can ride. If you look at, take KTM out of it. The two KTM riders can both get into the top 10, right? There's no Hondas besides maybe Taka, right, that could consistently get into the top 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you look at it, Yamaha, like Morbidelli, midpoint in the season, has 25 points, lads. 25 points.
Yeah.
Dovizioso is behind his teammate Darren Binder in the championship on 10 points both. But
Binder's coming off of sorry.
And Binder's ahead because he finished higher in a race than Davi. And it's a rookie in it. And I just personally think that Yamaha need to have a look at. And I think they do need to follow Honda in this step, that they need to go away. And Honda's design of the bike is radically different. The bike is on the rear. You know what I mean? It's the first time they started messing around with the electronics. It's the first time they started. I definitely do think they have a damper in the rear tail unit. Do you know what I mean? They're learning more so, and maybe 2 seasons of a test is this thing that they need. I don't see. But Mark is probably the best one to give him direction on this type of bike. If they go back to Mark's all over the front axle, they're going to come into this problem when Mark leaves in 2 years or 3 years time anyway. No one will be able to ride the bike. So I just think, and it's an interesting concept, and there's so many good riders out there, kind of brings me into kind of, I think, the next area that I was looking at during the week is Mir and Rins. You know, Mir is supposed to be going to Repsol Honda. Rins is supposed to be going to LCR Honda. Nothing is signed yet. Did you see Mir? And I did a video on it. Mir's manager came out and was just like, you know, he is a world champion. We're not going to sell him short. You know, we're going to make sure the contract is right for him. You know, again, if the contract is not right, you know, we don't have a plan B, but we're not afraid to stay at home either. Do you know what I mean? And again, I do think this is a message to Honda Japan to say, never mind what Pooch is telling you. This is how it is. This is what we want. You're aware of what we want. We'll take our ball and go home. If you want us in that team, this is what you need to give us. Don't think it's necessarily money, but I think it's conditions, maybe say in the development, all of these silly things that riders do think about. Oh, that front fairing is 0.0005 grams lighter, must be better. Do you know what I mean? It's just a manufacturing default or something in it. But what do you think, Ghost?
Well, I mean, there's two sides to it. I mean, obviously we've heard Rins' side, and from his manager now, we what do we know? We know there's no contract signed. There's nothing being released. We know that he's made a statement that he's willing to stay at home. You know, I thought you done very well. It was a good video. I enjoyed it. You spoke about the money. I mean, he said it's not a question of money. So if it's not a question of money, what is it?
He doesn't want to be a career killer.
Maybe.
My opinion, you know, if it's not about the money, he wants the bike to be able, so he isn't that second man like that always was behind Marquez and looks terrible. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, oh, he's horrible. And of course, it's always the rider, not the bike. You know, and all of a sudden, you know, nobody wants him because they think he don't know how to ride. Rins was you know, people called him a crasher. You know, when he was on the Suzuki. Imagine when he gets on the Honda. Okay, where he has to fight the bike. You know, he's probably thinking, "Oh my God, nobody will ever hire me again after 1 year." You know, so
yeah, I think though there's an old elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
A stat that I was looking up today is who is the only rider in the top 12 that's not gotten the podium this year, or close to the podium this year?
Yeah, very good.
Is it that it's Honda are like worried about his downturn of form?
I'd imagine it has to play a part. Definitely.
I don't think there's smoke without fire, but I do think there's something in it. And like bringing up Rins, look, Rins is very clear why he wouldn't go to Gresini. I think Rins, personally myself, I think Rins belongs in Yamaha, and I'll explain my reasons in a minute. But Rins literally said about Gresini that he wasn't going to go to Gresini because they weren't going to give him a factory bike. It's a little bit short-sighted in my view, because I think Zarco's day now. Even though Zarco is performing really well, I think he only has a year or two left in Pramac. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
there would be a good opportunity to get in it now. Hard and tough competition, but I would prefer to be on a GP22 Ducati next year than on the next version of the Honda 213 or CV 213, right? But look, each to their own. Personally, I think he'd be. My view, I think Rins looks well suited to the Yamaha. He knows how to ride an inline four. You know, switching to a V4 is going to take a lot of time for him to, just as a rider, just to understand. I think he could bring a lot of goodness to Yamaha from what he knows of what Suzuki were doing. So, I mean, he might not know the technical abilities of the engine, but he could just turn around to them and say, "Yeah, we put map 5 on, which was the highest horsepower map, and it killed the front end of our bike." So, little things like that. That I do think, but I know you might have a different viewpoint to Rins on the Yamaha Ghost.
Well, we discussed this before, and I mean, to switch to for Rins to Yamaha now would mean that Morbidelli would have to leave, and that's not going to happen, in my opinion, and from what it looks like. All soundings from Yamaha, and there's two very good reasons for that. Number one, he's contracted. There's three actually, right? He's contracted. Japanese factories don't generally break the contracts. Look at even with Honda. Well, you could say Honda's a different story, but Honda are paying 25 million a year to Marquez to sit at home. He's not done anything for the last 3 years.
Yeah, but Marquez sells bikes.
Yeah. That's true. So it's not a great.
Put a number 93 sticker on any Honda, and someone will go, "Oh, I'll pay you $5,000 more for that because it has a 93 on it. That's custom from Honda."
And he's been the whole package for their whole MotoGP package for a decade now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
True. But on the Yamaha side, you've got the association with number 46 with Rossi, who's their ambassador, and they don't want to break that. And who's Morbidelli's management team?
Oh, it is VR46. It is
Rossi, VR46. Plus, there's another factor. Look at what happened to Yamaha last year with Finales and the embarrassment that caused. Like that could have been a lot worse for Yamaha. It looked very bad in the beginning. You know, imagine, as you said there, Mac, there's only Fabio riding the bike. He's the only one able to ride the bike. You discussed Dovizioso's performance, Darren Binder and Morbidelli. Imagine Morbidelli was now to leave, and another big public breakup again this year. I reckon that they want to avoid that at all costs for those three reasons.
Yeah, I don't know. I would agree with you 100% on the relationship of VR46, because I do think Yamaha and VR46 will get together in 2024 to run the satellite team. But I think that'll be a work satellite team, very much so like Pramac Ducati will be VR46 Yamaha.
Yeah.
But I surely think there has to be something in a contract where it's performance related. Like 25 points after 10, 11 races on a works bike.
Yeah, he hasn't done too well, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
No, look, not like, I would prefer to see him crashing every single weekend than finishing. Because at least you could say he's trying.
Absolutely.
So he's pushing that to that boundary level. You know, he's going, but he's not. And I think he's in a mode of where Rossi was in his last 2 years. He's like, And look, contracts in MotoGP, they're not worth the paper they're written on. We'll pay you $5 million to go away. Do you know what I mean? Now, look, I just think, look, I don't think they will break it, but I do think that's where suits Rins, in my view. I don't think he should go to LC or Honda. He probably should have gone to Cressini. But, you know, then there's still that, I suppose, the other elephant in the room, which is RNF. You know, Oliveira is supposed to be going there. Again, that's all very quiet. There's no rumors or anything on that. And then there's Raul Fernandez. Will he go there? And you've probably seen yesterday's video, which will come out on Friday. By the way, we're shooting this on a Monday, but on Friday's video is about back to Moto 2, or to Moto 2 for the first time for Darren Binder. You know, because he did mention that RNF haven't told him what's going on either. So he's going into the summer break. His management team are trying to say, well, is he going to stay here? What does he need to do? You know, I do think Oliveira would get on very well on the Aprilia next year. I think he will fly it. My big question mark is over Fernandez or Binder, you know, and like I look at it this way, right? Raul Fernandez is 5 points on a KTM, but he's behind his teammate Remy Gardner, who is on 9 points. Who both of them are behind Darren Binder. You know, and I personally, I think he's made a great jump this season. You know, like to do that jump from Moto 3 to MotoGP, he hasn't majorly crashed, but there's no one talking about him.
Well, and I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole with his attitude either. I mean,
that's
it's
Raul
like a
Fernandez.
cancer. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
Raul,
mean, that's all you need is he starts spouting off about, it's prejudice and people against me and it was a setup and all this other kind of garbage. Okay, and that just starts filtering down through the whole garage and the whole pit area. I mean, and that's also that's PR you just don't need. Okay, it's not just going off the deep end like that. So,
Yeah.
and let's face it, this game is about advertising and looking good. It's it's a show.
Yeah. Well, he is. Look, he's a young guy. He's only fresh in the sport, and I think I said on the last podcast we had, and I've said it to you, Max, several times. Like the worst move that Raul Fernandez made was stepping up to MotoGP. He should have stayed where he was. He had an awesome first season, debut season in Moto2. He was fighting for that championship until the end. He almost pipped his teammate to it, and it was his crown to take if he stayed in it this year. It was an absolute joke that they allowed him to move. So I think a lot of it is mismanagement. But if you go back a year, right, I agree with what you're saying, Jake. He is a bit of a hothead, and I think we all seen the footage of him shouting at Remy in the garage in Spanish, and Remy was speaking back in Spanish to me. He was saying, "Tranquilo, man, tranquilo, relax, calm down." But the point I'm making is, if we wind it back a year and we look at the performance that he has, if he hadn't got like that, look, the KTM is a pig. It's a pig for all it. There's no one doing well on it. You have to admit that. Look at.
Oh yeah.
It's been a nightmare for him and Remy. But say he was left in Moto 2 on that KTM bike in that Aki Ijo's team, there's no doubt if he was still intact that he'd be leading the championship now, dominating the championship. He ran him up last year in his first year.
Yep.
So with that type of talent, say stepping up now, he could potentially be the guy to step into that Repsol Honda seat.
Do you really want the likes of Acosta and Fernandez together?
Well, if he stayed there,
not in a team, I think that would be poisonous. Just like that, I think it would destroy the whole team. Like, it was very clear they had to bring Acosta into Moto 2, right? Did they have to get rid of Fernandez up? And did they believe that he had the potential to do it? Because I think Acosta and Fernandez in the same team, those egos, my view, that would be like managing Alonso and Hamilton in Formula One in the same team again. It's going to implode instantly.
Yeah, but Yamaha had done it for years with Rossi and Lorenzo. There's been plenty of teams, throughout the history of bike racing where there's been two, hotheads in the same team battling against one another.
Not in a junior team, though. Not really in a junior team. No.
But you're digressing away from the point, I think, a little bit, Mac, if I may say so. I think the point I'm trying to make is forget about Acosta. Let's say Fernandez was where we reverse it back a year, right? He didn't make that move, and he's sitting in Moto 2 now. He's dominating the championship. Alberto Puig and Honda are looking at it, same as everyone else. And he's hot property. He's Spanish. He's up and coming. He's a potential candidate for that seat that Mir is dragging his heels, or that Honda and Mir's management are failing to get they seem to be getting cold feet about this at the minute. He could be a guy if he was in that position to step in, but he's not in that position. He's riding a pig, and as Jake said, he's doing himself no favors PR wise. Hence my point that it was career suicide moving him up to MotoGP last year or this year in a KTM.
Yeah, but as a person, okay, as a rider, as a person, it was just the way he went about it with the conspiracy, and they're out to get me, and they wanted Remy to win, not me. Like the whole team's against me and the manufacturer's against me. And this is when a guy's fresh and he's young and he should be hungry and appreciative. Yeah. What happens when he gets if he gets a couple wins in MotoGP? He gets one. His ego is going to be so out of hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That he's a walking disaster.
This is my whole point, right? Everyone is talking about Fernandez, right? But Darren Binder is doing a far better job.
Yeah.
He's riding
on
a lot
an
easier
equally pig of a bike. Huh?
I know. I mean, look, Yamaha have always been known as the easiest MotoGP bike for a rookie to ride. to step up on. The inline fours are known to be a lot less aggressive, a lot smoother bike, a lot easier to manage for a rookie to ride. They're just not. They're not as fast.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not just that, right? He's just. You don't hear about him. He's learning what he's doing. He's not crashing. He's not having tantrums in the pits. He's not. Do you know what I mean? He's sitting there, learning his craft.
Yeah. In my humble opinion, God,
exact same as DG Antonio and Bezzecchi. Working away. Mm-hmm. What you want to do today? Don't want to win the race. Just want to improve from my last race last week. Simple as that. Do you know what I mean? Rather than a whole fanfare and all of this. And listen, no, look, Razlan is a tough operator as well. I'm sure he'll be well able to handle Fernandez in the Aprilia team, right? But I just don't know. I think Binder is a better option, you know?
Yeah, Binder actually, what impressed me with Binder is he's coming up from Moto 3. I said he's coming up from, it impressed me, he's coming up from Moto 3 in his first year in MotoGP. He's going from a bike that's, 68 kilos, all right? Mm-hmm. And with 60 horsepower to a bike that's 300 horsepower or 3.25. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's totally apples and oranges. I mean, his learning curve is so steep, and he's done pretty damn well.
And he's beaten Dobby.
Yeah,
his teammate. Look, I know I always keep making that point, but look, that's the first rule of racing, right? Yeah. You beat your teammate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but there is a successful season, even if you're on a pig of a bike.
Yeah.
You beat your teammate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But you touched on something there a minute ago, Mac, when you mentioned about Morbidelli. Or no, Dovizioso. Or was it Morbidelli? I think it was Morbidelli, going a little bit like Rossi was for the last 2 years. Now, if you look at it, Rossi, but the three of them are in the same team last year. Mm-hmm. You know, they all seem to have lost the edge. Rossi, arguably, because of his age and his step down from the Premier team and the dose of COVID that he got in the COVID-19 scenario and the lockdowns.
And his daughter being born, man. Listen, you step onto a bike or you step like... My boy was born. I wasn't the same. I wanted to go home. I didn't. Whereas before, I didn't care if I went to the hospital or not. You know what I mean? Now I wanted to go home. You know. But you're like, Gwanya, you're right.
Yeah. When my kid was born, I got so calm. Before my kid was born, bikers used to see me and go, "Oh no, not this guy! He's gonna belt me." You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, after my kid was born, I said, "Oh, that's it. I got to be calmed down." My father, you're a man of means now. You know, it does affect you a lot. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if do you remember that 2020 crash in the Red Bull Ring, where Morbidelli's bike flew over Vinales and Rossi's head? You know, I wonder if that had an effect on Morbidelli, slowed him down a little.
I still do think so. I think he loves it, but he doesn't fucking love it. And they're two different stages of love. Do you know what I mean? And like I always remember when they were talking about Rossi retiring. Back in. Towards the end of the Ducati days, and I always remember Susie Perry was interviewing him, and it was like, she was like, "You don't need the money, you don't need the fame, you don't need anything. Why are you even still thinking?" And he just said, "I just fucking love it."
Yeah,
and that was it, Joe.
And the story.
And like any time going out onto the bike, you knew he was like 100% committed. Guy Martin is another fellow that used to be like that. You know, he's like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids until I win this TT because I want to give 100% to this is my job. He never actually won a TT, but you know, he did in many people's eyes. You know, but yeah, look, I think it's a whole interesting conversation between that lot, and I think, you know, once the Honda situation and the RNF situation is kind of resolved, let's wait and see how things are going then, I suppose. One of the things I wanted to bring up as well, has anyone seen over the weekend Daniele Petrucci trying to become Daniele Rossi in Laguna Seca with his pass. And your man Patterson or Pearson or
no,
whatever.
it didn't. No,
it was exactly Rossi versus Stoner at the top of the corkscrew, dove up the inside of him. I think it was Patterson. I'm not 100% sure, but Patterson literally followed Petrucci was able to keep it onto the track, and Patterson went off exactly along the lines of where Rossi actually went off. And then Patterson squeezed him back again and actually held the position. But it was just immense. Like I still remember that race that to this day. I was sitting in the kitchen drinking beer, watching Rossi versus Stoner, thinking this race is over. Do you know what I mean? That was before it even started. And I remember that pass, and I remember I was just shouting and roaring at the screen, and to see it almost happen again was just incredible.
Yeah. Well, Rossi had that mentality. He was balls out. He was going to win, no matter what. He was there, he was there to take risks. He was there to.
Jesus God, yes. Do you remember the famous when he went against Lorenzo? It was at the last corner of 9. And he's talking, and he's going, it's a slipping, and it's a slipping. I hope I don't crash, but if I crash, well, I take Lorenzo with me. I was so funny. He was like,
silver lining. Yeah.
They don't have. They have a lack of fear. It's not that they're being brave. They just don't fear. There's a difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I just think it's a mentality. Even towards the end of when I used to race, right? It was very much so. I would prefer to crash than finish last.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And it's the exact same way if you're in contention for a win, right? Last corner, last lap off. Fuck it, you gotta have a go if there's an opportunity, slight opportunity. It doesn't even have to be a gap. Do you know what I mean? You can force the gap. Do you know? And I think if you look at Rossi in say 2017 on, that kind of went away. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't really there anymore. And I see an awful lot of that though with Morbidelli. And I don't know, is that mentality or riders? Whereas you flip it the other side now and you look at Bezzecchi, right? Bezzecchi he'll go for it. He won't care. Yeah. He will absolutely go for it. Do you know what I mean? And Bezzecchi reminds me so much of a mixture between Rossi and Simoncelli.
Yeah.
Rossi in the way that he's clinical, and Simoncelli in the way that he's not afraid to pump the shit out of you if you started to fight with him after.
Yeah. Did you see how he likes rain? Did you hear what he said? He likes rain. He goes, I love rain. I'm going, how can you like rain on a MotoGP bike? I mean, but I can never fathom that. I can never fathom going in the rain at 180 miles an hour. It would just.
I can tell you why. So when I was growing up, my father couldn't really afford to buy me wet tires. And we live in Ireland, right? So there's a good amount of rain. So I had to drive on the circuit with slicks. Right? And you learn the line right around the outside. That's where there's less rubber from thing. So right around the outside, tip it in. But, your foot or your hand or your wrist or your arse, they all started to talk to each other. Do you know what I mean? And you knew how to feather in the throttle, whether it was a go-kart or whether it was a mini bike or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, when you're in a race meeting and they bolt on wet tires, well, it's like slicks on a hot sunny day, isn't it? Because you're not used to having the grip. All of a sudden you have grip. You're riding around the outside. You're a foot from the white line at the edge of the track, right? Do you know what I mean? So you hit that, you're off anyway, right? And you have so much grip that you're so not used to. And the second thing about the rain was that because we couldn't afford rain tires for testing, right? We didn't have the best or biggest budget for racing. So fellas are going off and spending €5,000 and €6,000 on an engine I was using the same engine that I drove, got rebuilt the year before for 1,800 quid, and made that do for the season. So in the dry, I was in a horsepower deficit. In the wet, hey lads, this is all equal. This is where riders, now you have the chance. So that's exactly why people love the rain.
Oh Jesus! When it rains, my ass tells me to stop the bike.
Fair weather rider. Let's just call it.
No, I used to ride all winter time in the snow. To be quite honest, when I was young, because I didn't have any money. Insurance was $20 a year, and my father wouldn't give me a quarter. So, but I just can't imagine going that speeds. I mean, in the United States, it is not the land of the brave. I can tell you that right now. It's the land of the cowards. If they see cars, they pull over and they don't, they don't go. It's everybody's afraid of driving, period, or riding, period. That's why you don't have people on bikes here.
Yeah.
Talking about countries and that. So Goodwood was on a couple of weeks ago in the UK. I don't know. Did you see Rainey going up the hill on the 500?
Yep.
Amazing to see it. Now I've seen him on the R1, but I think it was just the 500. It was just that, the bike that did the damage to him, that he actually got and mastered it again, I suppose. But it was. I actually think it was run by what's his name? Oh, Paget. Clive Paget's team actually ran it for him on the day, I believe. But they put
they had a Japanese engineer.
Was it Japanese engineers? But I think it was the Malenko boys were running it as well with the Japanese.
Could have been. Yeah, there was one Japanese engineer that was responsible for the bike who had converted it. He converted the controls. Mm-hmm. Apparently, he had when he clutched, it downshifted, and he had a switch to switch to upshift.
Class. Mm-hmm. And he had wasn't it bicycle pedals on the end of his boots as well, then to keep his feet clips, on the foot pegs. Yeah, bicycle clips. And then he had a thing tying his legs onto the bike. But fair play to him, and himself and Schwanz, and man, that was just looking at my childhood Saturday mornings, what I mean? Just watching our Sunday mornings, watching them race. It was pretty special actually to see him go up the hill, but. It's just magic to see. I was also watching a video on classic Team Suzuki, and I was just going through all the old 500s and 250s, and a thing that came out and it kind of shocked me was that they were saying the old classic 250s are more valuable than the 500s.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. Because there was more 500s made than 250s.
Yeah. I always thought the 500s were rarer, that they were harder to find. I remember a two-stroke collector that I bought a TZR 250 off many years ago, and he had an RG 500 Suzuki Special, a replica. And that was a very hard bike. It was his pride and joy, basically. Nobody was let near it, and it was only taken out on certain days. And I had the feeling that they were rare. They were hard to get their hands on.
I owned a Yamaha RZV 500, the ones that were from Japan. That some guy bought it over in Gray Market, and I got it when I was young, and I had it for like a month or two because it was so small, and I'm 6'4". Right, I'm 300 pounds now, but then I was 245, all muscle. I was always really in good shape until I collapsed in. But I just couldn't fit on it. Didn't know any better. I just sold it. I mean, I thinking, how much was that thing worth?
Yeah. That's it. That's the funny thing about these bikes, that I collect them and I put them in my shed, especially old little two strokes. But it's just, and they'll never be sold. My biggest fear is that I'll get knocked down or something, and she'll sell the bikes for what I told I paid for them.
I also had a TZ 750 that I got I went out with some girl in Harrisburg, is where all the licensing is done, and I actually got it street legal. I took her out on a date, so she pushed all the paperwork through, right?
Nice one.
And then put a magneto light in the front, right? Yeah, magneto lights what you have on airplanes. So when you turned it on, like it was the sun. I mean, you could see. You didn't blind one car; you blinded 10 at a shot, right? And it was just so hard to ride, though. When they say the RPM band, it's literally 2,000 RPMs. I mean, it's like you got nothing, everything, and then it was so hard to ride. I was like, oh, this is just. And then again, it was too small, So I looked like an ass with two wheels sticking out of it, So
that's it.
I had to get rid of it, but it was neat to have. You know what I mean?
Oh
Something
yeah,
talk about.
It's like crashing a rental car, isn't that right, Ghost? You gotta do it once in your life.
Sure, and look at it. It's an incredible era. The era I came up in, the era of the two strokes, and nothing beats it. I remember, like we were talking last week about the electric bikes and the switch from internal combustion to electric, and I was saying how to me it seems like it's stealing the soul out of the whole concept of what a motorcycle is.
Yep.
It's stealing the soul, and it almost felt like the switch to four strokes was another, not as big a step, but it was a sort of, for me anyway, it was the end of an era. But I know you're not a fan, Jake, but I remember at that time Honda brought out the V5, which was
beautiful bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that bike. You don't understand. To me, it's Honda before, when Honda was around, and then there's Honda with lawyers running it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's two different companies. There was good Honda and bad Honda,
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it,
It was real engineering, think outside the box,
Yes.
I thought.
Yes.
Honda Motor Company, as MotoGP Jules always says, Honda Motor Company. And the famous saying that a buddy of mine used to say about it is that if you could put a Honda engine into a Yamaha bike, the Yamaha would be the fastest Yamaha down the straight, and it would be also the fastest Honda around the corner.
Yeah. Yep.
That's just the way the two firms are.
And Suzuki was always down on power. You remember?
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. And it's surprising how these things always seem to, it's almost like a signature of the company, because Suzuki was down on power when they came back,
Yeah.
So
it brings up a great question, though, guys. It brings up a great question because we're looking at the era now, like we're on the cusp of obviously moving to zero emission fuels, but the state of MotoGP right now is that when Suzuki leaves, Yamaha are the only inline fours left, battling among a grid. As you said, Jake, you're not allied to any particular brand, but we've seen some incredible engineering from KTM, from Aprilia in the last number of years to get up there. Obviously, Ducati have been, pioneering the way there for years without even ever getting, only won one championship. Honda, as we said, with that V5, they have a very successful V4 unit there at the moment. What direction do you think Yamaha is going to go? I mean, there's two schools of thought on it: continue with the inline four, or switch to a V4, or to develop two parallel projects at the same time.
Two parallel projects would be great, but I think it's very expensive these days. I'd like to see them go with a V4, because there's problems at 300 horsepower per liter with an inline four. You have the wide crank, it starts to get flex, and it starts to get flex. You start to get bottom end bearings going bad, you're scorching, and the crank in itself can snap. It gets metallostresia into it. That's why you don't see inline engines in the rest of the motorsport industry. That's the reason they pull away from it. You know what I mean? Look at Suzuki. They had a sweet handling bike, and then when they added the horsepower, things started to go wrong. I think they've went through engines this year too. You know what I mean? They had this horsepower map that they're putting on and off. You know what I mean? And hoping the thing doesn't come apart.
I actually think it's Honda have withdrawn the most engines actually this season.
Really? I'm surprised.
I think it's Nakagami, and that could be from crashes, but Yeah, I think they're all on engine 5s at the moment. I think, but I think it's Honda have like 3 engines or 4 engines withdrawn.
Really? And but also with Yamaha, I remember in the beginning of the season, the crew chief for Yamaha said if we add any horsepower to the current Yamaha chassis, it starts to get all flexy,
Yeah.
right? He says it's not that we can't get the horsepower out of it, but if we do it in this chassis, the thing gets all spoogly. You know what I mean?
So it means going back to the drawing board. It means starting from scratch, because they'd have to start with a complete new chassis and a complete new power plant.
Right.
Can they afford that?
I don't. They're not. I don't hear anybody, unless I'm missing something. I don't hear anybody talking about putting a new chassis together from Yamaha. I just hear they're going to put another engine package together or update the one they have now.
No, I think that would. Being honest, I think that would, like, if they're going to go V4, they're going to have to. It's going to have to be a whole new chassis thing, right? I think. I know a lot of people are saying, you know, that Toyota do this and Toyota do that.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that they're not doing this, but I do think Yamaha, in my view, need to come and look at the whole package. Honda have taken a step ahead of them this year. They're going through some pain, which they'll probably go through for another 2 years to get that bike right. But once they get that bike right, their 4 riders will be able to ride it. That's my opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yamaha need to start that journey. You know, I do commend Yamaha for sticking to an inline 4. That's what their street bikes are. But that's super bikes.
Yeah.
This is MotoGP. This is full prototype racing. So what they learn from it sure feeds down into the actual kind of road bikes, super bikes, whatever. But like, they're going to look in 2 or 3 years' time. They're going to be like KTM. Like, how do KTM fix their handling problems? They change their suspension. Right, they get onto the suspension that everyone else is on. Right, the engineering team within Öhlins is superb. Right, you try and take away as many variables as you can. Their suspension is a major variable. Right, same with Yamaha. You know, I personally believe Yamaha are the best chassis makers in the world, and there is no reason with a V4 they can't make a sweet handling chassis. They have the technology, they have the know-how. Do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They made a V4 from 1981 to what 2000, right? When did the M1 come out? 2000.
It was around that time, yeah.
Yeah. So what?
2001.
2001.
2002 actually was the first year it raced, but 2001 was when they would have built a jet.
Yeah, so that's 18 years. Good stat, by the way, Ghost.
Yeah.
But they know how to do it. And if you look at, I mean, even as the Japanese go, Yamaha has more innovation than all the other Japanese companies put together. They did the Delta box frame, the aluminum box chassis. They did leading lump front suspension. They were the first ones to come out with the single shock rear suspension. I mean, EXUP. I mean, they were always the first ones to come out with it, even if it didn't work with with that 2 rear suspensions, one in the front, one in the back. Okay, but they always went out and tried it and put it on this, put on the street and try something new. Okay, but so they can do it. I think that anybody can do it. They can do it. They
can do it, guys. But another elephant in the room, Mac, if we're talking about them, is we see Suzuki pulling out right now, and the fundamental reason that Suzuki are given for the withdrawal is because of the economic situation that they find themselves in. Now, there's that factor facing Yamaha. There's also the factor of the uncertainty of the emissions. I mean, most factories go racing to sell sports bikes. Mm-hmm. Now, if we look at Yamaha, last year they took a clean sweep of all the superbike titles, the American, the English, and World Superbikes, and MotoGP. That was and motocross as well. Like, it was a phenomenal year. They cleaned up in terms of championships, which was a great year for the factory. Now they're at a point where things are uncertain. Another point is
okay. So we look at those points, right? Where I think Yamaha are different from Suzuki is Yamaha need motorbikes, right? That's their main core function in business. Where Suzuki have a car side, they have all of this other stuff that is going on, which is an asset drain, right?
Yeah.
100% right. They did have a clean sweep in all major racing things last year. Now remove Quartararo from thing because Yamaha didn't win that title. It was Quartararo.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, because if we looked at the end of last year's championship, where did the rest of the Yamahas finish? And I think this is the whole point of like economic cost. Yes, it is one thing, but no one can ride the bike, right? And that's a bigger waste of the money than anything else. Why have 4 bikes out there next year? Do you know what I mean? If they're all going to finish last, is that more of a bad for business? Do you know what I mean? I would slightly disagree with Joe to sell, like initially it was to sell sports bikes, right? But it's all about development now. Do you know what I mean? We're now going to see, cruisers out there with seamless shift gearboxes. We're now going to see them, with advancements within chassis, electronic suspension, all of this stuff. It's all going to feed down. Do you know what I mean? So I still think between MotoGP and every bike, not just sports bikes, there's a lot of technology transfer still coming. That's just my opinion.
I agree on that too, because MotoGP really isn't win on Sunday, sell on Monday. MotoGP is to show how good are you? How good are you as a company, as a technical company? This is what we can do. We're so good that we can have all these super, highly technical bikes and win. You know what I mean? This, it's not. This is the same. A super bike is for win on Sunday and sell on Monday. Okay. Well, our bikes are so good we can go through this torment of racing. Okay, and not break down. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Not blow up and endure. That's more or less. That's why I look at manufacturers championship versus the riders championship. Just for what you were saying, Quartararo won that championship. Marquez won the championship for Honda for 10 years. Where would Honda be without Marquez? It's the same situation. One half dozen or the other. With Yamaha.
No, but that's just my point. Or I think, but I don't know what you think about that, Ghost.
What the point about the rider winning the title? Well, look, I mean, the factories have always paid the rider to look at Doohan, look at Rossi, look at Schwantz, Rainey, even throughout history, Foggy, Carl Fogarty on the Ducati, Stoner on the Ducati, There were bikes other riders couldn't do the business with them. So it's a case of right. We've built a bike. Now we need to find a rider and pay the rider to get the bike across the line to deliver for us.
Yeah. But I just think, Joe, let's take Yamaha or even Honda. Right, 75% of them don't get into the top 10.
No, but. If you're looking at it from a manufacturer's point of view, you're going to look at it solely like that. But let's say we took Fabio out of the equation, and let's say, for instance, Oliveira came on board. He's got Oliveira, or they got somebody else like that who was able to ride the bike and had that right all out mentality there to just going to win. They were there to win, and that was it. Do somebody else on board like him or or another rider and they can do the business. They can always find someone. There's a pool of talent there.
There is, but if you look at it, right, there's a massive pool of talent there, and 3 out of the 4 Yamaha riders are proven race winners. I think Morbidelli won, didn't he? He did. Yeah,
he did. He came second.
They're proven world championship contenders, and only one of them can ride the bike. Do you know what I mean? So I think look, for me, I just think I would be very worried if I was the Yamaha factory rider or going on to a Yamaha. Yes, it's an easy bike to ride, but it's very hard, seemingly, to get the best out of it. Do you know what I mean? And that's for me, that's the fundamental change needs to be made. And I don't think in the current philosophy that they are doing that they're going to. Do you know what I mean?
Well, remember Quartararo on his second race win, I forget what track it was. He said he didn't think he would even make fifth, right? Because that's the time he said, well, we're going to make, after the first win, he said, we're going to take risks, meaning they were going to turn the horsepower up. And he said the chassis was like, giving it all kinds of problems.
Like Mugello, isn't it?
The Mugello, yeah. And that's like his crew chief said. And like you say, Mac, if they keep going down that same path, it's going to be just like the Honda, where it gets so bad, right? Even like Marquez couldn't ride it anymore. You're the best that there's ever been, and it gets so bad that he can't even ride around the problems. There isn't always somebody to ride around the problem. It's bad enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be a really, really interesting concept, and I personally think they're going to have to do something in parallel. I don't think Fabio is going to let them just launch a V4, just say, and ride it for 2 years to develop it. I think there's going to have to be a year or so of development of that bike and engine around Japan. I think Quartararo will go visit, have a go off it, give his initial feedback, and go from there.
Do you think are they working on it already, Mac?
I think they are, and I think that's why they've brought in your man. I don't think they're literally going to. I think they're working on it, and they've hit some trouble. Is my personal belief, and this is why they brought this guy in. This guy obviously worked with Ferrari and Toyota. I think with Toyota or maybe someone else, and
Aprilia,
but
Aprilia, yes, that was it.
He worked on the V6 turbo hybrid for Ferrari, so he's a V specialist, right? And then he went to the Aprilia team, but he got Aprilia to change their philosophy of the V angle, because the V angle was different. I think it was like some 70 degrees, and they brought it back to 90. I'm not 100% on it, but I know he got them to change it, right?
65.
And if he's able to influence an Italian team like that and to show them the benefits to why, I'm sure going over to Japan and influencing decisions, say, why are you staying with an inline four, or else there is a problem with the V6 or V6, the V4 that they're building, and he's there to bring that project to fruition. In my view, like, he's not just jobs for the boys; he's there for a very specific purpose. That's just my view.
Yeah, sure.
Has anybody run two parallel projects together that were that radically different? I'm trying to.
Ducati, GP22 and GP22.5.
Yeah. But V4 versus inline 4, that's even more radical.
Right height versus no right height.
But the switch from 800 to 1,000 and vice versa, those period times, there was overlaps of two completely different bikes. The next question is, with the amount of testing that a factory is allowed, and in terms of, like, they're not going to lose any concessions, in terms of, their placement, their ranking as a team at the moment, Yamaha, is pretty high. Say, look, if you look at it from the point of view of, if you compare them to KTM or Aprilia, they're not coming in with a brand new bike, even though they are. I don't think Dorna or the FIM are going to see it as a new bike and allow them any concessions to develop.
No, not at all.
They're not allowed that.
They're not.
No.
Like, Honda didn't get any concessions, for a completely radically different bike.
True. You're right.
Now, maybe if they went through and they had an absolute pig of a year and they scored no points, I think they gain concessions back. Or if they have, Joe Sabine, but Honda I think they've had a podium, and Mark won. Did Mark win?
Not this year.
Not this year, no. I think
nobody won.
No Honda, and no Honda will probably win this year either. But I think they won't get any concessions, so this is why they have to be right within the project.
That was my next question.
And like realistically, so we talked about financials and this, that, and the other. They can't. How expensive would it be if there was a year where they scored no points? Do you know what I mean? So I think they will run two side-by-side projects. In my own view, I think they will similar. Like even what is it by 2027? They're going to be running full carbon neutral fuels, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
so. I do believe a lot of the engines and the internals of the engines are going to have to change to be able to deal with that fuel type. Just like leaded versus unleaded, do you know what I mean? Seals, all of this stuff will have to be re-engineered. Same with the synthetic fuels. So look, I think maybe that's where they're building it for. Might not be in the next 2 years that they move to V4, you know, but maybe for the whole complete changeover, they're like, okay, this is the year that we're going to do it. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's a 1 year project. Personally, that's my own 2 cents on it.
Mac, you know, is there any words on to how much fuel they're going to allow them to use for the synthetic fuel? Because cutting back fuel, how much you're allowed to use, that costs a ton of money apparently in engineering. That's a huge cost. You know, to have it run, let's say instead of 29 liters, you run 27. You know, when you're really, you know, hardly making it across the finish line.
I actually think they will go. I think they'll go the other way with the fuel allowance. I think especially when they come in with the synthetic fuels, because like there's not going to be the data there to say that okay, you can actually make it on 28 liters. Do you know what I mean?
And it's ridiculous anyway. You know.
Yeah. Look, I think they will be a little bit more generous on that. But lads, I think we're well over our normal limit. But look,
sorry about that.
No hassle. But look, it was super to have these chats, and thanks, Jake, for coming on. Hopefully, we will see you again soon.
I bought a better mic, so next time.
Good stuff. Ghost, thank you again. Hopefully, we might see Sleepwalker next week as well. I do know he's going.
I was going to say, Sleepwalker, he's been absent for the last 2 podcasts. Jake, you would have liked to have, and I'm sure all our viewers would have liked to have got the update from him, because he's a real road racing nut, and he's been to, he's been to this week gone. We've had just Walterstown, which is for motor racing club, which is my own home club. I didn't make it myself because I haven't been going to the road racing in a while, but he's there. He's the one providing the footage, and he gives an incredible report from the races every weekend. So we hope to have him back on now soon to bring us up to speed on, because we're right in the thick of it, the middle of the Irish road.
I'm so jealous, you guys. You know that we don't have any of that. Nothing. You know what I mean? If you see 5 bikes in a day, it's like, wow, a lot of bikes on the road. That's all we get. You know what I mean? And they're all Harleys in the area. So
well, look, great stuff, lads. Thank you so much for joining. We will do a podcast again next week, and that's it for this week. So we'll see you soon.
Hasta la vista, guys.
Cheers, guys.
I just want to take a minute to also thank you for watching my videos and the support that you've shown so far. If you haven't subscribed already and you would like to subscribe, it would mean an awful lot to me if you did. I'm starting this channel realistically so that we can all enjoy MotoGP together, with the aim of streaming a live video when the GP races are on.